The DCEU is dead, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube already breaking down the massive failure it was, but an aspect I don't really see folks on here talk about is the toys, or lack thereof, towards the end. Because when you look at the grand scheme of things, in the beginnings of the DCEU, toy companies were supportive. For every new film releasing, companies like LEGO were ready with merchandise. But as the films continued, less and less merchandise was produced to coincide with each new film's release. In LEGO's case, by the end, they showed an extreme distrust in DC's plans, and anything that didn't start with the word bat was deemed too risky and was never properly supported. Today on the channel, I want to dive into how DC failed to meet LEGO's expectations, and what its history of failure means for the future of DC and brick form. So, let's begin. Part 1. Enter the Batman. In 2004, LEGO was in danger. Mega Bloks had outsold them the previous year, and it seemed their years of dominance was about to end. With depleting sales, something needed to change. So at the time, new CEO, Jorgen B. Konstrup, introduced the Action Plan, which I won't go deep into it in this video, but in simple terms, LEGO would stop making experimental products or movie time products and would focus primarily on core brands that would always be in demand. So, enter Batman, who over the past 30 years have proven to be a toyetic property that no matter the circumstances could always sell toys. So come 2006, LEGO Batman was released, and famously LEGO decided not to adapt any source material when developing this line. All 7 sets LEGO released in 2006 were recognizable as Batman vehicles with recognizable Batman villains and locations, but they weren't based on anything, not the movies nor the TV shows. The intention was that just because these were Batman sets, they would sell. Similarly to other themes that launched in 2006 like SpongeBob, that sold simply because of the brand's recognition. LEGO was really going all out, because at this point, what mattered most was saving the company. And for 2007, only 2 new sets came out, the Batcopter and the Bat-Tank, because the idea was that the 2006 sets would still be around and would sell. But considering LEGO's limited manufacturing capabilities at the time, heck, they even had to outsource production to China, LEGO would focus on profitability, and for themes that failed to meet sales goals, that meant early retirement, because they couldn't afford to keep producing sets that weren't selling as fast as others. And while I couldn't find any hard evidence of the classic Batman line failing to reach sales goals, fact of the matter is, by December 31st, 2007, the first 2 waves of Batman had retired. And it's evident the theme wasn't breaking records, because through the 2006 and 2007 LEGO annual reports, there isn't even a mention of the theme. But everything could have changed in 2008, with the release of The Dark Knight. LEGO released 4 sets. This time around, LEGO sort of made these tie-in products for the film. I say sorta because the only accurate elements from the wave was the tumbler and the Batman minifigure. But the most upsetting thing about the Batman line was, in September of 2008, TT Games would release LEGO Batman the video game, which proved to be a massive hit, becoming one of the most successful LEGO games at the time. But the issue was, the games were based on the toys released from 2006 to 2007. Yet none of these toys were in production anymore. Saddest part is, the 2008 wave was also retired shortly after. But with the LEGO Batman video game being a pack-in title for the Xbox 360, the game became the introduction to Batman for a lot of kids around the world, myself included. And LEGO created a huge demand for Batman toys, one that they themselves also killed. Part 2. New Beginnings. So in 2010, after realizing the big mistake they made by canceling the Batman line prematurely, LEGO began development on a new superheroes line, one that wouldn't just cover Batman, but the DC universe as a whole. And with Disney buying Marvel in 2009, LEGO also got the rights back to Marvel. So, come January 2012, LEGO launched the DC Superheroes line, that did primarily feature Batman, but Superman and Wonder Woman also got some representation. And come April 2012, LEGO launched the new Marvel Superheroes line with tie-in Avengers sets as well. And the Avengers proved to be a massive hit, and in terms of toy sales, it did better than expected. At this point, LEGO wasn't the same company that launched the Batman sets as a Hail Mary in 2006. They were a profitable and growing company with resources to heavily invest in both of these lines. Later that summer, The Dark Knight Rises came out, and it was also a massive hit. And while LEGO didn't release any tie-in products at the time, The movie's success created a demand for the character that could only be filled by their own DC Superheroes line. And that was probably LEGO's plan from the start, alongside the new LEGO Batman 2 video game, to push sales for the DC line. And while Marvel had a whole slate of films lined up after the Avengers, Christopher Nolan was done with his Batman films and was ready to move on to other things. But DC wasn't, and they were gearing up to relaunch their second most iconic character into the mainstream under the direction of Zack Snyder with Man of Steel. So come 2013, LEGO released 3 sets based on the film, those being Superman Metropolis Showdown at $13, Superman Black Zero Escape at $20, and Superman Battle of Smallville at $50. And just like the film, these sets received mixed reviews, mostly criticized for their gray and tan color schemes, but in LEGO's defense, they were accurate to the film. From my understanding, the sets sold okay, not as good as the Iron Man 3 sets, which in a business sense, the Marvel side of the theme was the benchmark DC was failing to meet. But for DC, it was only the beginning. In the following year, in a move similar to Marvel's Phase 2 and Phase 3 announcements, DC revealed their movie film slate, with a variety of iconic names like Batman, The Flash, and Wonder Woman, and with a few not so well known names like Cyborg, Shazam, or the Suicide Squad. With release window set, it was now up to LEGO to create product to coincide with each new film's release, just like what they had been doing for Marvel at this point. And for the next few years, LEGO Marvel completely dominated, with MCU sets creating B-list and C-list characters into merchandising machines. And LEGO attempted to do similar work by featuring DC characters alongside Batman vehicles to build out both brands. Because if both Marvel and DC are doing good, it means LEGO is doing good. And finally, come 2016, LEGO is gearing up for probably the biggest year yet for superhero films. Marvel was coming out with Captain America Civil War, a film that arguably was just as big as the previous Avengers film, and LEGO came prepared with a wave of 3 sets. But for DC, they were bringing out the big boys with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Understandably, Zack Snyder's films aren't really toyetic, so LEGO played it safe. They made 3 sets, the smallest one being the Clash of the Heroes set featuring Batman vs Superman. The next set was Kryptonite Interception at $30. Again, real safe, just another Batmobile set. And the largest set of the wave was Heroes of Justice Sky High Battle, a set not only featuring Batman and Superman, but Wonder Woman and the Batwing. And just like Man of Steel, the film was plagued with bad reviews and box office disappointment. And it sucks for LEGO, because they were guaranteed this movie would have been a moneymaker. Heck, all toy companies were ready for this film to be a runaway success. LEGO even produced new elements, showing the incredible amount of faith they had in this project. And yet, kids weren't running to stores to buy these sets. And what sucks more is that the product was great, but the content didn't produce the demand that was expected. The next DC film on the calendar was Suicide Squad. But for the first time up to this point, LEGO chose not to make sets based on the film for obvious reasons. So they instead chose to include some of the comic versions of the team into the regular Batman sets to coincide with the film's release, which was a great move, and arguably this was the last great DC superheroes wave. And on the film side, Suicide Squad was a financial success, but was hated by critics. And with Batman v Superman also having an underwhelming reception, Warner Bros. Appointed Jeff Johns and John Berg as the new heads of DC, hoping they could right ship and steer the cinematic universe in the right direction. And for 2017, LEGO mostly focused on their LEGO Batman movie sets, but Warner Bros. Still had 2 DC EU films on the horizon, with Wonder Woman and Justice League. For Wonder Woman, it sadly only got 1 set because of the film setting, but also probably because Wonder Woman's merchandising potential to the target audience was unproven, similarly to Doctor Strange the previous year. So LEGO chose to play it safe, and just made 1 affordable set with the main characters and the villain. And the movie itself was great. I personally love it. But the set, once again, kids weren't running to stores to buy it. Heck, I've even found the set still shelf-warming at stores recently. But for Justice League, which was finally coming out in the fall of the same year, in theory would be an event film at the same level as the Avengers, with massive merchandising potential. Sadly, the film was plagued with tragedy, which I won't get into, as well as reshoots, where Joss Whedon was brought in to fix the film, and even characters like Steppenwolf were redesigned during post-production. But none of these changes truly affected LEGO since they played it safe, because most of the sets were just Batman vehicles and a small location set. But if you're watching this, you probably already know the movie flopped. It lost money. And the sets, well, nobody bought the sets. The Aquaman set especially peg-warmed, and retailers put it on hard clearance to get rid of it. And sadly for LEGO, once again, they invested so much money into these sets, with arguably some of the best element design LEGO had given us up to that point. And at this point, they already had more sets in development for future films, but the future wasn't looking bright. If you're enjoying the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing if you haven't, because it really helps me out a ton. Anyways, back to the video. Part 3. A new direction. In 2018, Warner once again shifted its executives, with senior executive Walter Hamada now appointed as the new head of DC. And that year, Warner also announced that DC would switch away from its interconnected universe and focus on just telling good stories, with a lot of its DC slate being delayed or cancelled. But a film that did meet its scheduled release date was Aquaman, which proved to be a big hit, being the only DC EU film that made over $1 billion. Simultaneously, LEGO released an Aquaman set that did not age well, but controversy aside, the set was great. Not movie accurate, but it brought the fantastical toyetic energy that DCU sets were lacking. And the set also managed to not be a huge shelf warmer, so that's a plus. Later in 2019, DC released Shazam, arguably a good movie. But on the LEGO side, we got a mere polybag and a comic tie-in set. It was evident the failure of the DC brand in cinemas hurt how children perceived the toys. While Marvel was breaking box office records, not even comic-based sets would sell. Also, it doesn't help that the LEGO Batman movie oversaturated the market and the quality of the sets didn't carry over to the normal lines. But we won't get into that right now. Point is, LEGO didn't trust the DC brand, and the only way to sell DC characters was through Batman. In 2020, LEGO once again skipped a Harley Quinn film for obvious reasons, but they still had one more set in the pipeline, 2020's Wonder Woman vs. Cheetah, which also had a hard time selling. But that was mostly because the set had terrible box art, and also the fact that the set came out in April to coincide with Wonder Woman's 1984 summer release date. But because of the pandemic, the movie got heavily delayed, and as it stands, this is the last DC EU set LEGO ever produced. After that, the DC line just became the Batman nostalgia line. Meanwhile, DC would stick to its new direction of standalone movies with very little crossover. And so in 2022, LEGO released the Batman movie sets, which, while the movie is great, I've always thought these sets were lackluster, mostly because they try to be toyetic off a movie that isn't toyetic. But for me, the hardest pill to swallow was LEGO's reluctance to financially back these sets. The best example is Robert Pattinson's Batman minifigure, which felt lazy, leaving most fans with a sour taste. But honestly, I was just happy LEGO made sets based on the film once more. Part 4. The Last Straw. At this point, LEGO wasn't picking and choosing anymore as to what DC EU films would get time product. It was simply one question: does it have Batman? If the answer was a yes, well then LEGO greenlit new product. If the answer was a no, well that meant they were skipping the movie. Such was the case of Black Adam and Shazam: Fury of the Gods. But when The Flash started development, that presented a great opportunity for LEGO, because The Flash is like Superman in a way. He's simply not toyetic enough on his own. But with the Flash film bringing back Michael Keaton's Batman, The Flash presented itself as a moneymaker, because now you had the perfect excuse to exploit adult millennial nostalgia, just like what LEGO had been doing the previous years. The issue came during the summer of 2022, when the Flash actor Ezra Miller was arrested and charged with a felony of burglary, trespassing, and larceny, which he pleaded guilty to. And at this point, the film had been in development hell for years, with directors leaving the project left and right, and when the film finally got its July 2022 release date, it felt like the movie was finally coming out. But because of the pandemic, the film got delayed to November of 2022, and then later, because of the actor's public behavior, the film got delayed to summer 2023. Meanwhile, LEGO already had their set designed and was in the pre-production state, with tooling reportedly done and ready for production. But smartly enough, LEGO canceled the Flash movie set and shifted to repackage it as a Batman '89 set. The Flash itself was a terrible film that became a box office flop, just like all the other DC EU films post-2019. Part 5. A New Beginning. again. It's easy to say things were a mess at DC and Warner Bros. So in November 2022, Warner Bros. Appointed James Gunn and Peter Safran as the new co-heads of DC Studios, with Gunn announcing his plans to reboot the entire cinematic universe in 2025 and start fresh with Superman. And this feels like a new beginning, just like it did a decade ago. The difference is that DC brand is extremely damaged, and there hasn't been enough distance from the failure that was the DCEU for companies like LEGO to be trustworthy of the brand. And looking at the trend in DC product, it's evident LEGO has no belief at all in the brand. Just a few years ago, they would create their own content in order to sell toys. Now they're relying on nostalgic content to sell. And while I like the new product, believe me, I think the new animated series sets look great. It's evident there is no more faith in the brand outside of Batman, because whenever they took the risk, they saw no reward. And what was supposed to be a safe bet lost money. But what does that mean for the future going forward? Well, if LEGO were to make sets based on Superman, they should be finalizing the designs about now, with product testing either going on or starting. And considering LEGO just created a new rubber cape element, this looks and feels perfect for Superman. But considering product development takes about a year and then 6 months of pre-production and another 6 months of production, I'm not sure we're getting any Superman sets. Because at the time LEGO would have begun developing the product calendar for summer 2025, Hollywood was in the middle of an actors and writers strike, with only part of the movie's cast announced. But who knows, maybe James Gunn had a lot of concept art ready for the film by August. We know the movie script was already finished. But even if the timeline fits, which I don't think it does, just by looking at the track record, I think it's evident LEGO doesn't care nor sees the DC brand as a pillar of their product offerings. To me, it feels like LEGO is contractually obligated to make DC sets. And with this being the 4th time a new creative head comes into DC to give it a new direction in the last decade, if we look at it from LEGO's perspective, I don't think it moves the needle. And there are no signs pointing towards the new DC universe being a guaranteed hit. And even though the production timeline maybe fits, and that's still a maybe, I think the new DCU will have to prove itself before companies start believing. The saddest thing is, I'm a big DC fan, and I'm actually really excited for Superman. And everything about the cast and the suit makes me think they're finally gonna hit it out of the park. So please, LEGO, I know it's probably way too late, but at least just give us one set. That's all I'm asking for. But hey, that's just my brick opinion. Thanks for watching and take care.